Hello and welcome to the Sanctuary, a safe space to speak from the heart. I'm your host, Israel, and my guest today is a coach, CEO, host, writer, a mom, and the founder of Safi Media. I got that name right, Safi Media, right?
Yep.
Safi Media. Eleanor Beaton, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
It's my privilege to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh man! So I remember I saw you put up a post on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Who is this person?" And then I listened to the podcast. I'm like, "I need to talk to this person." It's like you have this way of taking things that like should be boring and mundane, and like attractive, interesting, makes you curious, like spark something inside you. How did you discover that about yourself?
Oh, wow. What a great question. I think it got affirmed a lot as I was growing up. So I was always really interested in reading and storytelling, and I had an imagination for stories. I loved, language, words, vocabulary. I was always reading books that were too challenging for me. And so it really developed this sort of facility with language and this love for ideas and concepts and trends. So when I sort of combined that with my lifelong love of watching Oprah, like personal development, that's where it started coming together. But I always was encouraged and given a lot of support in instances where I made a point about something or I wrote an essay about something. So I think it really from childhood, my teachers and sort of parents and family recognized and nurtured this burgeoning skill that I had to do that.
So they put in all the work, but you still had to do a lot of work. And what are some of the work that you did over the years that led to Safi Media and this amazing person I'm talking to now?
I would say a few things. So practicing my craft. So at the heart of everything I do, I think, is the craft of writing. So I really see writing as my core skill set. And what I've always believed is that in order to be able to write well, you must be able to think clearly. So I trained as a journalist. I can remember for, a 10-year period in my life, I probably wrote 2,000 to 3,000 words every single workday. So
No, that's
yeah,
insane.
yes, it was insane.
Like all on your computer or like with like literally writing out with a
Both.
pen?
Yeah, both. So I did two things. So this was what I would do. Literally, I would get up early in the morning, really early. I would have like a massive cup of really strong tea. And then I would do 3 pages of longhand writing because I got this from Julia Cameron in The Artist's Way, and she calls them morning pages. And so you write 3 pages longhand, just about sort of emptying the contents of your mind.
Yeah.
Then I would go and work on a piece of writing, like creative writing. And then I would go to my job, and I had like a communications consultancy, and I did a lot of journalism, business journalism. I did a lot of communications consulting. So that it was a 10-year period where I was just pumping out words, working on my craft. And that is how you learn how to express an idea. Because I think we live in this extraordinary world filled with extraordinary people. Most things are actually quite interesting when you really think about them and can explain what makes it so interesting to you.
Well, first off, I don't. I might sign something, but other than that, I type because I have one of those doctor's writings. Like
Yes.
have you like when you read a prescription, like what
Yeah.
is this?
You're like, what?
Sometimes I wonder how like pharmacists and nurses read what doctors are writing because like my writing is like that. Like I'd write something And days later, I'm like, I have to. What was I trying to say here? So, I'm lucky that like I have my phone here, and like Evernote is my friend. I think it's one of the first apps that I actually paid for. Like I just dump everything in there, and like I type it there on my computer, but like writing with my hand is just so tedious and it's so painful. But
Mm.
the one thing you mentioned that I think most people don't see is especially now, like where we have all the answers on Google, and like they like you go on YouTube and someone is going to teach you how to be the best writer in 2 days, is that people don't see that who you are now and all these skill sets you have, because like years and years of doing this thing over and over and over and over again. And it's like I just wish people would understand that that's how simple it is.
Yeah, that's right. It's basically as simple as applying base of pants to seat of chair and pressing firmly day after day.
Yeah, yeah. So you did that for 10 years, and then when did you decide, okay, I'm gonna set up Safi Media, and what's like Safi Media all about?
Well, in that process of just doing an immense amount of writing, what that 10-year period was all about for me was about an intense period of thinking. And in that time, that's where I realized that, a lot of the work that I was doing was really helping others to communicate, to market, to build a brand. And in that work, what I realized is that I actually had a lot of ideas and experience and thinking that would benefit people.
Mm.
So I started my own blog. And none of the writing that I had done, really it was all for a purpose. I was getting paid to do pretty much all of it. And so the blog was the first time that I just started writing to articulate some of these ideas. And it was like, the same experience of growing up. I started writing down my ideas and got a lot of support. So I had an email list, and that started growing very easily, from this blog. And that's where somebody said to me, Eleanor, I think you should think about coaching. And so at first, I didn't think that I had any interest in doing that. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that what a coach really is somebody who helps people understand their own minds better. It's about clear thinking, and that's what I always had been able to do. So I, got certified as a coach and started to figure out, how do I make the transition from the work that I'm doing as a communications consultant to having a coaching business. That transition, took a couple of years, and I was building my company around my own brand. And I decided that, it's time. The company was growing, and I wanted to be a spokesperson, but I was no longer all that interested in having a business that was completely tied to my own personal brand. Mm-hmm. I wanted something that could grow without me. I wanted something that could be bigger than me, because, I had a very deep connection to the work that we were doing. So from the very beginning, I was doing a lot of coaching with women entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. And that, advancing gender equity globally, advancing women's economic empowerment, I cannot do that on my own. There's no way. So that's when I decided to build, to create and launch Safi Media. So Safi Media stands for Self-Actualized Female Innovators, and it really refers to this sort of class of women, and maybe class is the wrong word, but it's this very influential group of women who are educated either formally or in the School of Hard Knocks, are very independent, are affluent because they've created their own economic, power in many situations, and are massively influential. These are the women who are controlling 80% of purchasing power. Mm-hmm. So I decided, look, that's who I'm here to serve. And so I'm going to start Safi Media, And we are going to advance women entrepreneurs and advance gender equity one woman entrepreneur at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to do it through education, through media, and through storytelling. So that's really how it sort of, there's the Coles notes on how I got started with Safi Media.
Why was the focus right on female?
Yeah, that was a really, it wasn't a, it didn't start out as a strategic decision. It was an instinctive decision. I had this sense that I just wanted to primarily engage in working with women. And it's interesting now, when I think back on it, I remember like we immigrated to Canada when I was a kid. My
From
mother
where?
from the UK. So my mom's from the Fiji Islands. My dad was Welsh. They met in the Fiji Islands. He was making $9 a day. He went over from the UK as in sort of the volunteer service overseas. So he was working in the Fijian Central Planning Office. He was making $9 a week, rather $9 a week. So he had to literally go spearfishing for his dinner. He meets my mom. And she's a teacher. She had a career. She was independent, and she was the main breadwinner. When, we moved to Canada because my dad got a job as a prof at Acadia University, Mom looked around and she was like, this culture is so different. I do not feel comfortable putting my daughter in childcare. I don't know these people. Like, this culture is completely different. So she made a life-changing decision to step away from her career, ultimately for 20 years, and raise us. And my parents had a wonderful relationship in many ways, but it was also a very traditional relationship. And my mom, here was a woman who, up until she was 70 years old, she could bench the 45-pound plates. She could squat. Up until I was like 19 or 20, she could like do full squats with me on her shoulders. She was incredibly independent and self-sufficient. And she was completely financially dependent on my father for big parts of their life. And I can remember her driving me to basketball practice one day, and they've had a disagreement about money. And she says, money is power. Always make your own. And I really saw how even in wonderful relationships, what the impact on women of being economically disempowered. And I think that was such a formative. I saw the same thing with my grandmother, brilliant woman who felt that way. So I feel as though it was this sort of instinctive lineage kind of thing, that just a fire in my belly. That's where that decision came from. Yeah.
And so what was the process of setting it up? You have this idea,
Yeah.
these people you want to reach out to. How do you get it up and running?
So most of my, career moves have been very much evolution. They've been sort of more of an evolution. A lot of them have been based on my natural sort of instincts for how to do things. So what I did, how I set up Safi Media. So basically, the transition that I made from running a consulting business into the coaching business. In my consulting business, I was paid to produce content. In the coaching business, what the switch that I made was that I was no longer getting paid to produce content, but my content built the audience that then went on to pay me, And so the heart of everything I do continues to be media production, content production, storytelling. So the way that all of my big sort of business moves were built on the back of high quality content. So it started with blogging. To this day, I have an email list. I have a newsletter that I send out 3 days a week.
3 days a week.
Yeah, blockbuster open rates, the sort of mega people on our list, who read that content 3 days a week. So there was that. And so I started blogging, and then I transitioned to a podcast. So then I was like blogging and podcasting. I would produce virtual events and in-person events. So it was always this idea of content, of sharing ideas, of sharing knowledge, of inspiring people through clear thinking, and clearly communicated ideas. That was really how I made the transition. And, from a business model perspective, I started by selling one-on-one coaching packages. And I did that sort of one-on-one probably for about a year. And that's how I made money. And I learned how to sell. And I learned even more about marketing. And then I moved into group coaching programs. And so today, I only sell two things. I have that's it. So I have sort of an initial group coaching program called Power Presence Position. And that really helps people find that niche, because that's quite important. And really, so a niche is scalable offer and a message. And then I have a year-long coaching program, and that's all about building the foundations to be able to scale a service-based business to $1 million in revenue. So it was a lot about creating great content that attracted the right people, providing highly valuable information in an easy-to-consume way, and using the power of our stories to forge connection and to, I think, help my clients appreciate, accept, and see themselves better. Yeah.
Yeah, that's you keep doing all these things that people don't understand. You start small and then you build. Everyone just wants to build a big thing, but they
I
don't
know.
know, you start with a brick and then you keep adding it up.
Yes.
Um,
I didn't think about that, but that's so true. That is so true. I think it's the only way. I remember I learned this sentence from Barb Stegman. I think you would know Barb Stegman. She's kind of like she is an entrepreneur. I met her when just before she started her perfume business. She's amazing and has so many amazing turns of phrase. But I can remember sitting down with her and we were joking around about something, and she said, "Oh, I'm humble, but not modest." And I was like, I think that's true. Like for me too, I really believe in the power of humility, of being humble. I would say most of the mistakes that I've made, or not many of the mistakes that I've made, have been when I wasn't humble. And I do think there's a difference. I don't believe in modesty. I don't believe in pretending I'm less than I am, or, pretending I'm less successful or less smart or less interesting than I am to make other people feel better. To me, that's modesty. I'm like, I'm not going to hide it. You can see it, but I do believe in humility, in being grateful for everything we have, in not underestimating the power of consistent work. The power of dedication to craft. Those things I really believe in, to your point.
I mean, and besides, like, if you put in all this work, there's nothing like, if you go, you plant the seed, you water it, you weed, you do all these things. Why are you not going? Like, why will you feel bad if you're enjoying your fruits? Like, I don't understand that.
Truth.
Yeah.
So true.
Anyway, so you were mentioning something, with all the writing for 10 years and stuff. How did you see like the rise, the slow rise, and the now the crazy um levels that social media has grown to? So like you've seen this rise for 10 years. What has that experience been for you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think, increasing amounts of pressure and comparisonitis. So I think, social media, like, you know, because there's just this natural ability. Let me put it this way. I can remember listening to an interview with Reid Hoffman, and he is a big time Silicon Valley investor and sort of startup advisor. And I can remember him saying that he would never, who has invested in a lot of the social platforms, by the way, who said that he would never invest in a platform that doesn't directly play on or leverage a human vice.
So gambling, porn.
Yes, exactly. Coveting, like, so much of social is about coveting, things that you don't have, or vanity, presenting the very best. And so I would say I have a very pragmatic view of social, in the sense that I believe it is a massive tool in the ability for people who have a message to access an audience. The unfortunate thing is that the platforms themselves are very often agnostic. They don't care if your message benefits society or derails society. And I think last year, the advent of just a slew of documentaries about the ills of social media, the fact that so many people who've created these social platforms don't allow their kids to use them. So I think, on the one hand, it's been a huge benefit to me to allow me to access an audience that I would have to travel, or it would have been so much harder. It has also really lowered the bar, so that on one hand, there's a lot of noise and competition. But I think, what that in turn does is that for me, all I can speak about is my own experience. I had to set very clear boundaries around what I use, why I use it, and for what purpose. So I don't think that it has been a net positive thing for society at all. I think most social platforms have actually been, when we look back in history, net negative. That said, they're here to stay.
Yeah.
So I have no qualms about leveraging them.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you find something, you learn it, and then you learn the safe way to use it. Like everything
Yes.
has risks, right?
Yes.
So you just wouldn't get behind the wheel of a car and drive, like, you just, put it in gear and it will move. It's still going to do what it's going to do, but you don't feel comfortable enough to get on the highway, or until you've, gotten your license, done all these
Yes.
things. And even at that, you take it bit by bit. And as with everything, you take the good and you leave the bad. And well, yeah, yeah,
That's the
yeah.
key to a happy life. You know what I
I
mean?
agree. I
It's
agree.
the
I
key,
agree.
like, yeah. But
So, how like, were you born here, or were you born in England?
yeah, yeah. I was born in Wales.
Okay, and then you
And
moved
yeah,
there.
I was
Like,
born in Wales.
how
Yeah.
old were you when you moved?
4.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So like, you
Yeah.
don't have much of that memory from,
No,
yeah.
not really. Not really. We would go back, and most all of my dad's family is still there. But no, I very much, well, actually, I was about to say I very much feel Canadian, and I do, but I also have this thing that I think you can feel as an immigrant. I think you can sometimes feel as somebody who's sort of other or different growing up. When I was growing up, I was the only biracial person. I looked very different. My mom, in Fiji, they believe your spirit is in your hair. And so traditional Fijians, like my mom, would never straighten their hair. She continues to this day to have a pretty massive afro. And so we would go around, it was clear, like we were different. And so I think that I have this experience that I don't think is that unusual, of assimilation to the culture, and also a feeling that I don't totally belong, and so I've never, as an adult, I've never really felt at home anywhere. So, other than in my own personal environment, but I have that for sure. And so I know that other people feel this way. I think partly that also can give you a perspective, so it's part of what I do too, that I never totally feel of it. So I look, but I observe it, I'm around it, I observe it, but I don't ever feel kind of it. Yeah.
Um, so you said your dad moved to Canada because he got a professorship
Yeah.
in Dal. In what school?
Acadia. Yeah.
Antigonish. How was like so you
Wolfville.
had to leave the
Wolfville.
like it's a small town. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, so it was Wolfville, and then we actually lived in the countryside, even
I keep
outside of
mixing
Wolfville.
the
I know.
two schools.
Get it right. Get it right.
Senefex is the
Oh
other
god.
place, and then
Yes.
yeah, I
Yes.
keep mixing up the two schools. Okay, yeah, yeah.
You know what, honestly, and I will say, like, we just moved back to the town.
Oh,
So, Wolfville, I am a lover of college towns. I'm a lover of, like, so when we were growing up, I can remember we didn't have family. So our family were other professors and their families who had moved to this town, this small town, from all kinds of different countries. And they were trying to create relationships and families as well. And, I can remember that my parents, they just had so many friends. They had a really active social life. There were friends from all over the place. And because they were profs, and I don't know if you've spent a lot of time with people with PhDs, but you know what I mean? It's pretty funny. Like, they have the ability to talk about ideas. They're fairly well read. They also, a lot of their training is to be skeptical. So you have these educated, skeptical people battling each other about their ideas so I grew up in that world, and it was so much fun, and it was so enriching. Wolfville over time became more of a multicultural place. And it still is, it has this sort of small town energy. And to me, that is the kind of environment where I thrive. Like, I have lived in Toronto. I travel a lot to larger cities. I love the sort of heartbeat of big cities, but I feel most at home in small towns. Yeah.
so you mentioned you lived in different cities and you travel a lot. I'm guessing like for conferences, to
Yeah.
talks, things like
Yes.
this. Last year, I'm guessing usually, towards February, you're preparing for like, spring and summer for all this,
Yeah.
traveling for the talks and the conferences and there was a shutdown. Uh, what were you preparing to go, what were you preparing for the summer of 2020 and how did the shutdown change that and how did you adapt?
Oh, yeah. Such a great question. So, to give you a picture, in my business, we would do a minimum of 5 live events a year that we would host. They were a huge part of our programming, and what we offered to our clients in our programming. I did a lot of traveling to network and speak, and that was a big way that people discovered me, and my company. And so I'll be honest, though, I was getting tired of that. Like, you know, I was,
Oh, another plane, another
I
hotel,
know,
another early breakfast, another
I know,
talk.
I know. I was like, this globe-trotting lifestyle, I just can't take it. So I was getting a little bit tired of it. And I had remembered a really good friend of mine. She in turn had a good friend who was a global keynote speaker. And she had been warning me for a couple of years. And she was saying, Eleanor, keynote speaking is amazing. Do it. But be careful of it too, because it's a little bit like a drug. And so she was telling me about this guy who, big audiences, great money, just a ton of adrenaline around it. It's really fun. They treat you really well. And it can be hard. And it's also a very easy way to grow your company. There other people are building the audience for you. So I knew of this, and I was starting to get tired of it. My boys, actually, so I have two sons, 10 and 14, they were getting older, and oddly, you need to be more present the older they are. So when they're babies, you can kind of go through the motion doing their thing and hugging them, and that's pretty much all they need. As they get older, your presence, like this is where we build relationships, where I'm talking to them, where I need to hear them, to help them talk through decisions, or to be able to clue in, is something wrong? Because they're boys, and they're not as vocal as I was, so you have to be more present. So this was happening. So what the shutdown did was give me the gift of halting all travel. So it's like, Eleanor, you kind of wanted to do this, now you have to. So the immediate thing that we needed to do was really create digital marketing and content marketing at a level that had responsibilities that it had never had before. And so that was a learning experience, because I was a great marketer, but to be able to use marketing to replace public speaking as a lead generator, that was completely different. So that was the first thing. In the absence of having physical events where we could bring our communities together, I had to rethink how to design what I wanted our programming to look like. And so that was also, another shift that I had to make. And the other thing I think that was so huge, starting around September, what we started seeing was all of this research coming out about how Canadians were doing from a mental health perspective. Women were not doing well from a mental health perspective. Employee engagement was at an all-time low across the country. There were a couple of different studies that showed like 60% of Canadian employees wanted to quit. I'd never experienced anything like that as a boss. So doing, the pressure of having to make sure that the business stayed really healthy, of making the transitions and the operations of our business that we needed to, homeschooling my kids, coaching other entrepreneurs who were dealing with this and being a support for them, and doing my best to make sure that the team had the support that they needed. That was a lot. So I kind of hit a wall myself in September. September and October, I really experienced it was kind of like a depression, I was low, and I've been low before in my life, and had experiences and stuff, but I felt like I just couldn't really get myself out of it. Like I just felt low. And so I wrote a lot about that. I talked a lot about that. And that experience, so many other women, again, content, right? So many other women were experiencing that as well. And I just didn't rush myself to feel better. I just accepted, where I was. I was like, what are some of the most important things to do? Our business has become very simple to run. And so a lot of things were actually quite easy. And then, over time, November, December, January, like I just started to feel better and better. And I feel like with the vaccines rolling out, I just think there's this sense of renewal everywhere. So 2020 was for me a really powerful experience. It was tragic around the world, but it also created a lot of positive change for me. Yeah.
So, what you were mentioning just actually made my mind fly to a discussion I was having with friends, these two women I respect, and what came out of that, well, one of the things we talked about was, being a woman, you are a woman,
Mm-hmm.
mom, wife, if you're working, in your case, CEO, you're coaching all these people. And like in a way, coach is like a mom too, right? So you're
Can
doing
be,
all
yeah.
these things. At times you kind of forget to take care of yourself. Do you ever deal with that? And if you do or don't, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I think that yeah, and I think the places where I was starting to see it were in like being kind of glued to my desk. So, just being very sedentary and then not sleeping enough. So, two of the biggest changes that I made, and I can remember I was talking to my trainer. So I was like, "Oh, I have hormonal weight gain. I know it. It's hormonal. I need to fix my hormones. This is happening to me." And so she says, "Yeah, but have you ever considered getting like a Fitbit or anything like this?" I was like, "What is this minion step counting business? I can't even believe it. You're insulting me. Get out of here with that." But
Yeah.
then, I thought about it. I was like, okay, fine. So I had got my husband an Apple Watch. He didn't like it because he didn't know how to shut off the notifications. So I borrowed it. And I realized that I was getting like maybe 2,000 steps a day. And so I immediately made the switch and started walking. That was it, like 10,000 steps a day, and just cutting my caffeine intake so I was sleeping more. And to me, those two things made a huge difference because I do think it's easy to deplete the well. And then before you realize it, you're having a glass of wine to relax, you're having coffee to keep you awake, you are working a lot, so you're not able to kind of, you're not getting the movement that you need. So I think it's just so, so super critical. Yeah.
And then what are some things you do for self-care? I mean, apart from the walking and
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is not allowing toxic people in my life. So
yes.
that's
You
huge.
know, so I'll let you continue. But I just had to that just triggered something in my head. There are people that feel bad for cutting toxic people. Like why are you feeling bad? It's like you are like in quicksand, right? And you are finding a way to get out to help this person that's in the quicksand with you, and the person's like, no, 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 don't get the help you need. We're gonna stay in this fucking quicksand together. Like, why would you feel bad if you're cutting the person? I don't understand it. Like, why will you feel bad? Let the person go. The person is not good for you. Anyway, yeah.
Right? No, totally. So many of our problems, I was thinking, so many people, the analogy is like, imagine that you had two 25-pound dumbbells and then you jump into a pool and you are like fighting for your life, trying to, and it's just like, let go of the dumbbells and you will rise. And so I feel like, number one thing is just being very mindful about what gets in, so that's sort of the first thing. I have, this has happened more recently, really making sure I don't need a ton of friends. Like I need just a few, but they better be good. And so
Yeah.
those, you know what I mean? Those friends that I have who I can laugh with, that's the most important thing. Really kind of staying connected and with those people, that's another huge thing for self-care for me. And also dressing beautifully.
Why?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's kind of like, I remember as a kid, I was obsessed with Cleopatra's rumored beauty regime. So she would like bathe in goat's milk and she would do this and she would do this. And I remember just being really interested in Cleopatra's beauty regime, even though she was like this legendary beauty, but apparently she actually wasn't classically beautiful at all. But she treated the way that she adorned herself and treated herself, it was very intentional. And so, I really believe in that as well. believe in, how do I want to present myself to myself and to the world? And will I take the time to do that? And so you won't catch me in yoga pants Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. But 5 p.m., it's full on athleisure.
Wait. Even like, now, like with the pandemic and stuff.
Oh, I was. Yeah. So I was doing that. And then I took a
Okay.
look at myself one day and I was on a podcast, video podcast that was widely watched. And I was like, whoa. So my eyebrows were like one. They were like one eyebrow. And my whole, and I was just like, wow, I don't even like that. I don't even feel good presenting myself like that. And so it's, it's sort of those, I think it gets back to that thing that we were talking about earlier, which is sort of daily dedication or daily devotion. Like, can you be devoted? To me, I'm very focused. So it's like, I'm just going to devote myself to a few things, but this is something that I can do that has only good and doesn't have any bad. And please, if I felt like getting into athleisure, I'll do it. But I like to present myself in a certain way, and that feels like self-care to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. So yeah, let's hop on the podcast. What was your process for starting that? And, I guess what's the behind the scenes that people don't see?
So it's so interesting. So I was going to start a podcast in 2014. I talked myself out of it. It felt complicated, the tech side of it. I told myself that the tech was too hard. It's not. It's not. You know what I mean? And so 2014, so then in 2016, I decided I'm going to do it. And so I gave myself 6 weeks to record 10 episodes to get it launched. I hired a producer right away to help me. And I launched the show, and it was called Fierce Feminine Leadership. And so at the beginning, I produced 3 shows a week because that's how I like to roll. And so I was like 3 shows a week. And my goal was really about frequency, about building a following, about, building that audience through frequent, high quality content. That was 3 parts value, 1 part attitude. And that's still my sort of mantra today. 3 parts value and insight, 1 part attitude, and sometimes a little bit of humorous shade thrown in there too. So that's how I did it. And then, rebranded the podcast in 2020 to Power Presence Position. And my process really, it's fairly organic. So I am a person who I like consistency. So
Me
I
too.
like, right?
What people call that boring, I'm like, it's not boring. Like, this thing is gonna work. You just keep that going that way.
Yes, I know. You know who also loves consistency? Warren Buffett. So y'all can just stop. Exactly. Y'all can stop. I love consistency. So to me, it's like I like things that I do regularly. And so normally there's not a ton that I do on a one-off basis. There's a lot that I do consistently. So I consistently produce podcasts. I'm usually planning out content or rough ideas about 4 episodes in advance. But I usually don't batch podcast episodes because of the energy, like interviews, these conversations, I'm an extrovert, they give a lot of energy, but to show up and be clear, to focus on communicating without 50 million ums and ahs, that takes some focus, So that's my process. I'm usually communicating about something that is meaningful to me. I find I have to be kind of energized around it. Otherwise, the end show doesn't have that energy that I'm looking for. But I think the big thing that has helped my podcast is attitude. So really not being afraid to have a voice, to have opinions. So that sort of energy. And also what helped it even more was the willingness to get started and then the willingness to continue to refine it over time.
Yeah. And you still use a producer?
Yeah, still use a producer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you? Do you produce it yourself?
I'm like, all of the things. Well, so I'm lucky in that, because I have a film background. So
Yes.
film is super collaborative. You can make a film alone maybe,
Yeah.
but like you can't, like, no matter how small, you need someone. Even if you're acting, you still
Mhm.
kind of need someone to be behind the camera and make sure you look okay. So
Yeah.
you can't walk alone. So in the process, I made, like you said, this really tight, really small circle of friends. I call them my Avengers, and I don't know if you know anything about like the Avengers or Marvel,
Yeah, I
but
do.
exactly.
100%.
But so it's like they're all like superheroes, and then they have like their own franchises, but when the world needs saving, we all come together to do something. Usually it's my world that needs saving
Yeah.
because, like, I'm lazy one. I'm not really technical. And I don't really know much. I just fake a lot of
But you have a
things.
winning personality.
Well, yeah, I guess that's what they like, right? So I'm like, by the way, I need help with this, and then we'll just come together. And then, but the thing is, we'll kind of create it in such a way that it becomes plug and play, and then once it
Yeah.
becomes plug and play, I just kind of take over from there. So
Listen,
like,
I love that because I think what you have are like these creative thought partners. And that to me, and this is so interesting because this year in 2020, I realized like what I wanted because it stripped away all the unnecessary things, right? There's just nothing, all the unnecessary things. If you didn't have to go to the grocery store, you weren't going. You were going to cook what you had in your fridge, not what you had the inkling for, just stuff
mm,
like that. So, to your point, like I love that relationship. A group of really creative people who have their own specialties, but you can come together and you're probably talking through projects a lot. To me, those relationships are like oxygen.
mm, mm, mm.
Am
Yeah.
I overselling it,
No, no,
Israel?
you're not at all, really, right? But the good thing is, like, so I can have many things on the go because, like, I have many really cool people that like these really cool things. So like now, like, we are working on a film and a documentary and a podcast and this thing, but like, it, I'm just lucky to kind of be the face, but there's like so many people behind me. So like,
That's
I'm
amazing.
standing on the arms of these really, really awesome people, and
Well,
I can't do one thing that at least looks this good without them. So
mhm.
like, I'm really, really thankful for my Avengers, and like, I try to make sure that I also bring someone to the plate. I guess I bring my smile.
No, I think that, well, so many things, but I suspect like storytelling, the ability to build rapport in an interview. And I mean, look at what Oprah did.
Mm,
Look at what that skill set just did to, in her interview with Harry and with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. I
mm,
mean, I was watching that. I don't know if you, so I grew up watching Oprah and she doesn't do her show anymore. So you don't get to hear her do these interviews.
mm,
But I heard that interview and I was like, the power of conversation to challenge and disrupt institutions, to
mm,
bring awareness. I mean, that was just so incredible. It's such a valuable skill set.
mm, mm.
So
Yeah.
guys and gals, Avengers, be thankful.
Yeah, no, they're like, and we've been working together for since 2016, right? So my very first film, that's when we met, and then everything I've made moving forward, we've just worked on it. It's like, and then, if like, we kind of just contributing to each other's things because we all have our
Yeah.
things. And then, but the thing is, I'm Nigerian. Like, I was born in Nigeria, and growing up, I wanted to make films, like, but I didn't have the opportunity to. So then I had the opportunity to move here, and like, here, like, there are all these opportunities. So my approach is to just, if someone is like, can you do this, I'm like, yes, and then I'll figure it out. And so it's like everything I've done since I've been like, yes, how the fuck are we gonna do this?
Me
And then I
too.
do it.
Yes.
So I'm always kind of learning on the job. Like now so I came from like, okay, I don't know how to make a film to like I can make a film now to like I don't really like in being in front of a camera to like starting a podcast to like having a daily podcast to like building it into a network now. So like it's like if the opportunities that I'm just gonna grab it, and I'm just lucky that I have these people behind me that
Hmm.
just push me and like give me this full and like we just like let's keep going. And then so it's like every and the thing is like they get this message from me like it's usually like 3 or 4 in the morning when I have this cool idea and they're like, oh fuck, he's doing it again.
Like, what is with this guy? But I
Eh,
think we all, those sort of ideators and instigators and catalysts, it's like that is so important too. It's life giving and energy giving, even if there's some work involved.
yeah, yeah, no, no.
Yeah.
So life is going to slowly open up at the point. What are some plans for Safi Media moving forward?
So we will definitely get back into doing some events, but I feel like I have a clean slate with events in the sense that I can sort of reimagine them and run them differently than I used to run them. And so once we are vaccinated, we will open up and again start having live events, which will be really exciting. I am really looking forward to doing travel again. So, traveling to beautiful places on holiday, and also traveling for business. But what I'm really excited about is that I'll be able to do it less. So I used to do like 24 trips a year.
Yeah.
Now to me, I'd love to do like 8.
Mm,
Go away to a nice place, 8 times, like for work mostly, and then some personal as well. That's
mm,
what I'm really looking forward to. Yeah.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
Oh man, Eleanor, thanks so much for coming on the show and for getting me to laugh and talk and chat and sharing so much about Safi Media. And I think we should actually start a show together.
That would
I
be
don't
super
know what
fun.
yeah,
That
I
would
don't
be
know
fun.
what we'll talk about, but I think like we kind of like have the same values. We like love
Totally.
consistency. We don't like
Yes,
toxic people.
I
You
know.
know, yeah,
No
yeah. We
toxic
should we should
people.
we should totally do something to get something
That
together.
would be fun.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
And you won't need a producer, so
I know, exactly. So I'm like, woo! My gosh, we have the Avengers.
yes, we have
I
the
can be Black
Avengers.
Widow. Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, this is too much fun. Thank you so much for coming, Eleanor. I can't wait to have you back, and we should really talk about what our show is gonna be called. I don't know.
True, true. Exactly. It could be called Truth and Consequences.
Oh my god, that
Oh
that
my
is just asking
gosh.
for trouble, though.
So funny. I know. So funny.
Okay, okay, I'm gonna let you go, and we'll come back together. Ooh, we'll come back together real soon.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming on, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.